Today, most of us recycle. What we see, however, as our metal, paper, and plastic leave the curb is the beginning, not the end of our connection to what we discard. Where our recyclables go and how they will be processed is elevating the importance of port cities like Oakland, California. Like the shifting tectonic plates that lie beneath Northern California, other elemental forces are shaping the future of the Pacific Rim. Countries lacking adequate labor and environmental laws are adopting our capital-based approach to industry with little restraint or benefit of hindsight. These changes are sending tremors through our national manufacturing base. Their impact on the environment may be even greater. For decades, consumers have benefited from the decreasing price of complex products, especially electronics. Demand for products has gradually increased the need for raw materials, both virgin and recovered, used in their manufacture. Already, a large percentage of our scrap materials leave the United States. In fact, most recyclable paper, metal, and plastic collected in Northern California is exported from Oakland to countries on the Pacific Rim. With cheaper operating costs, many companies in Asian countries are able to outcompete domestic reclaimers.
Suddenly we find ourselves a country built on the exploitation of our own natural resources and our own manufacturing close to the sources, the forests and the mines. China is in many ways following that model, but has built a bridge to that model with our scrap materials. Right now, our bridges and major construction projects are experiencing triplings of the steel prices and the cement prices for those core projects.
Where industry is growing, you need raw materials. They need our recyclable material as raw materials. It's a cheaper feedstock, or even in some cases an available feedstock. It doesn't even necessarily for them have to be cheaper than virgin. They just may not have enough of the raw materials. So they're able to pay more for material, especially here on the West Coast, than the domestic reclaimers are able to pay. And that means that material's going offshore because the recyclers want to get the best price they can for their material.
They are growing right now at a rate of 8% a year, which is a rate of economic growth that our country has not seen for at least a couple decades. And this growth is expected to continue, and yes, it is largely fueled with scrap material from the western United States.
With the rise of gas prices, can we ship material across the ocean and then have it shipped back to us once it's been processed? If we lose our manufacturing base, we will be in a position where we have to load everything that we produce onto a container and ship it all the way across the Pacific Rim. China
is actively exploiting its own natural resources and is building factories that will be set up to utilize oil and byproducts of oil and gas.
The export market, while it's strong and may continue for a long time, it's volatile, and it also puts us in a pretty vulnerable state.
That's the complexity, is if you try to internalize things at the local level, you then start losing business at the international level. If we're able to do things locally in terms of our economy, really utilizing materials locally, it doesn't matter as much. If we're trying to do things on an international global scale, then we've got to find ways to internalize costs across the board for all countries. I think that's the big conundrum of our time.
The amount of material that is going offshore is growing every year, and that means that there's less material that's available to the domestic market because we're not seeing a growth in collection.
We're using more and sending less back into the manufacturing stream and importing more than we're exporting. Cities like Oakland struggle to maintain a diversified economy. You can still find a variety of manufacturers here. Manufacturers that enable the Bay Area to handle its own resources rather than rely on the export market for reprocessing.
Oakland is the fourth biggest port in the U.S. and really is the port of call for all of Northern California. Goods are coming in and out of Oakland that are serving Silicon Valley, that are serving San Francisco's economy, and really serving the region at large.
I think Oakland has a much more diversified base, and we saw a lot of people leaving San Francisco to go to Oakland to work. being pushed out of San Francisco by .coms coming in and basically pushing out housing, pushing out nonprofits, pushing out businesses that couldn't afford to stay.
Oakland, in many ways, is a good place to start thinking about the state of recycling and the question of, can we close the entire loop? Will we just collect the materials, or can we make something out of the materials here?
The land pressures, the cost pressures, the difficulty in siting industrial types of businesses is pushing business out of Oakland. And Oakland and the East Bay is kind of where our industrial base is now. If we lose that, we've kind of lost the last stand on sustainable industry in the Bay Area.
We take measures to make sure that we have wastewater treatment facilities, enough for everyone to have proper sanitation on their water services, that they can get fresh water and that they can get wastewater out of their homes and properly treated before it goes into the bay. Distribution of electricity, building of roads. There are basic utilities that are provided in virtually every home in the Bay Area, and that's the way the society is organized. What makes recycling somewhat unique is that it is a public purpose, it is a public good, but it tends to happen best, and more of it tends to happen if it is also allowed to be a private enterprise. It may have to involve the provision of land for certain core services, certain core uses that we know we can't put on a ship to China, to recover materials locally, make sure that we have adequate compost facilities or construction and demolition facilities, and that there will be private operators. So it's going to be, to use what's now a cliche, a public-private partnership.
Most people believe a healthy economy requires some basic industry. Materials collected via recycling represent an opportunity to reinvent a manufacturing economy. Companies that handle and reprocess our recyclables provide jobs as well as long-term stability.
We are a clearinghouse for demolition of both public and private structures, streets, buildings. We take in only aggregate-based materials, then we process those materials into the whole band of products that would be used in a construction setting. We have in our West Oakland operation in excess of 15 people that work on a day-to-day basis. Throughout our company, we're somewhere near 50. The site allows the contractors to bid in a tighter time frame, hence saving money as well. I believe that the recycled aggregates is the major change of construction management in an urban setting. We are now a focal point of the construction industry for aggregates in Oakland. We recycle 200,000 tons of material annually. The virgin sources are rapidly depleting in the Bay Area. And the aggregate that we're taking in San Francisco is coming in by ship from British Columbia. We're faced with land utilization decisions right now in the Bay Area that will decide what the extent of recycling is for our children. We need to retain those options.
Part of our mandate, in addition to the environmental mission, is to provide vocational opportunity for disadvantaged individuals, low-income individuals. For the most part, we deal with two species of wood, redwood and Douglas fir, because we are primarily taking material out of the waste stream that is produced by demolition or dismantling of structural buildings. I think we all really enjoy that sense of having made something out of waste, out of trash. We are tremendously cavalier about resources, including wood, in this country. Fortunately, we're also very trendy. There is, for a variety of reasons, a kind of increasing cachet and design interest in reclaimed material. People say things like, I don't have a problem with the nail holes, I just don't like where they are. But since we don't actually put the nail holes into the wood in order to get a given effect, we're sort of stuck with where the nail holes were when we got the wood. We get a lot of architects trying very hard to spec us, and that's one place where, among the architecture community, where I see a lot of interest in reclaimed materials and green building generally.
We have 48-foot trailers spotted on the landfills, on each landfill. We bring the full trailer here, and we separate all the good reusable mattresses right off the top. And then all the other mattresses that are in bad shape, the springs, the wood is cracked, those go through a process of, we strip them down and separate all the textiles. It's all done by hand. We separate the cotton, the foam, quilted material, the pad. We shred the metal from the springs. Those go into car parts. The wood goes into composting. The foam is used to make carpet pad for residential and commercial use. And also the toppers, we call them toppers. They're the quilted fabric on the top of the mattress. Those also go into commercial grade carpet pad. Cotton is now being tested for insulation for homes. We do approximately 5,000 mattresses per month. 1,500 to 2,000 mattresses are reusable. 2 to 3% of non-usable textiles goes back into the landfill.
If there's agreement that recycling implies industrial activity, then comes the question of where should the industrial activity be? Should we not have a reinvention of our industrial economy based on these recyclables? What we're asking folks to do is just to consider the full loop and the full cycle of these materials and consider which is more sustainable. Is it more sustainable to use an item once, whether for 10 minutes or for 5 years, then discard it, hope that it gets scrapped out and recycled as much as possible, sent across the Pacific Ocean, sorted out there, made into a new product, and sent back to our shores? Or shall we go further with our recycling ethic and try to examine possibilities to reutilize materials locally in our own economy?
Zoning is very important because right now there's a lot of pressure in California to have zoning for housing. You're seeing farm loss, you're seeing industry being pushed out, but there's still the opportunity to do industry here, to use reclaimed materials, to make new products.
Prominent among innovative approaches to resource awareness is zero waste, placing recycling at the center of its vision of a world where the notion of waste becomes obsolete.
Zero waste means no materials going to landfill or incineration. Even if we accomplish that, we're still going to have a lot of waste because it takes about 70 tons of material to produce every ton of material that we consume. So there's a lot of upstream waste that goes beyond zero landfilling at a municipal level. I think to really get to zero waste, we have to go up the recycling hierarchy. We have to really focus on waste prevention, not producing unnecessary products.
It is a goal, and it is a direction that we need to go. How close to zero can we get? It doesn't matter. What matters is that we are pushing ourselves beyond where we are today.
Not all we export is safe. What we send abroad, what it contains, and how it is handled once it gets where it's going, is a pressing issue. Our efforts must reach beyond our borders. We must work in concert with other countries to ensure we all abide by adequate labor and environmental standards. We must level the playing field for the survival of processors that can handle our resources locally and provide the land they need to sustain that work.
In order to keep our domestic industry strong, it seems counterintuitive, but what we need to do is to help the Chinese market. They need to be handling this material in a more environmentally responsible manner. Recently, Japan proposed that there be a recycling-based economic growth in the Pacific Rim. It was accepted by the G8, and it's going to be proposed at the APEC meeting later this year, so that we have a recovery-based economy in the Pacific Rim. It's going to even the playing field for us here in California so that we can compete in the region for those raw materials. And where it makes sense for us to use the materials, we can. But where it makes sense to export them, then we can do that too.
The true meaning of recycling is an opportunity for us to reinvent our local industrial economies, to take responsibility for the materials that we use, and to take better care of the planet for our children. It can create more jobs than it does now, and now nationwide, the recycling industry approaches the size of the U.S. auto industry.
This call for a new cyclical economy is an urgent one.
One of America's greatest strengths has always been innovation, and I think the area we need to innovate now is towards zero waste. I don't think we're going to see big technical fixes for our industrial problems. It seems like every technological fix we have comes with a whole new host of problems. And we need to use our innovation to make energy, transportation, recycling as clean as possible. I think we can lead the world to zero waste. If we continue leading the direction we're going or other countries are going, I'm not sure what the future is going to be.
We need help. We need people to care about this issue. We need people to care about jobs and the economy. And we need people to care about the environment. And people do care about these things. They just haven't put them all together yet. And now is our opportunity to put all of those things together. We need the public behind us. We need them to understand recycling can be an entire economy. It can be the base of your economy.
According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the planet has endured a 46% increase in personal consumption among the 30 most industrialized nations since 1980. How long can we sustain this way of life?
We as a consumer have a huge influence. We can choose to listen to the marketing, but the marketing really listens to what the people have to say. So if we really want to make a shift in what's being produced and thrown at us, then we have to consider what we're accepting.
I think recycling is one of the key things that each of us has to do, along with saving energy and using appropriate transportation. Each of us has to really try to reduce our waste at the source. We need to buy less stuff. We need to reuse things as long as we can. We need to recycle and compost everything that we can in the programs that we have in our communities. And this is perhaps the most important thing. We need to buy local products that are made with recycled content.